So my guest in this episode is someone who truly embodies the spirit of lifelong learning and reinvention. She's not only an accomplished author of nonfiction books, but also a distinguished retired professor at Boise State University. For 7 years, she brought thought-provoking ideas to the airwaves through her daily NPR radio column. She writes for Psychology Today, but now she has embraced a brand new path, fiction writing. So what happens when an expert in creativity decides to become a beginner again? What does it take to unlearn patterns, shift from scholar to storytelling, and let curiosity lead the way? This episode is packed with wisdom for anyone standing at the edge of a pivot, wondering whether it's too late to start something new. You are in for a treat, and you may want to take some notes too. Welcome to the Minute Mastery Podcast, a conversational productivity and time management podcast where busy authors and entrepreneurs are inspired to create time for what truly matters. I'm your host, Ngozi Edema. I'm a time management coach, writer, and entrepreneur. Here, you are encouraged to turn your minutes into milestones and to create at least 1 hour a day working on your goals without feeling overwhelmed. And while you are here, hello mamas and papas. Are you looking for the next book for that special kid in your life? Here is a book recommendation for you. Meet Freddy and the Veggies, an adventure where veggies are superheroes. Fun, colorful, and a parent's secret weapon. Say goodbye to veggie battles at the dinner table, because in Freddy and the Veggies, kids discover that healthy eating can be an exciting adventure. And they can still hang out with their sweet friends too. Fun characters and lively illustrations. Available in the Kindle store and on paperback formats. So my guest in today's episode is a former professor at Boise State University, a former adjunct professor at Aalborg University in Denmark. She teaches strategy and creativity, coaches executives, and leads Boise State University's 1-week executive MBA residency to Vietnam. You're welcome to the Minute Mastery, Nancy.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, Nancy. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. So, like I said to the audience, we are in for a treat. You started out in nonfiction and academic writing, where clarity, structure, and explanation are everything. You guide the reader through every argument and idea. But in fiction, it's different. It is character-driven. You show rather than tell. You leave space for emotion, ambiguity, and interpretation. You trust your story, you trust your characters, and you trust the reader's imagination too, to explain things the way they see it. What made you make that shift from nonfiction to fiction?
Right. Well, as you said, I have been an academic for a long time, and in that world, you have to publish academic articles and books. So that was part of what I was expected to do. You are also absolutely right that in academic writing, you need to collect data. You analyze data, you explain it, and talk about what it means. So it's very concrete. You have a very clear structure that you have to follow. About the time so this is maybe 20 years ago, I was doing these short snippets, daily commentary on our local national public radio station. I realized that kind of writing was quite different. It was had to be very concise, had to be engaging to the general public, to leaders, and I enjoyed it. It was fun. And so I shifted some of my academic writing to become a little more accessible to leaders and managers, meaning I was writing books that were not completely academic. They were based on information and data, but they were a little easier for most people to read. I used several organizations as key case studies. And after I did 2 books on creativity, I asked one of the CEOs of one of the companies that I studied about the next project. And he said, I don't read books that are more than 100 pages. And so that shifted me to writing even more concisely and clearly about leadership and what I was learning. Also during that process, I thought, if this writing is enjoyable and I can do it. Let me try to learn how to write fiction because I love reading fiction and mysteries. So I took an online course, and about halfway through, I said, this is not for me. I am not good at lying. And one of the students in the class, also an adult learner, said, Nancy, it's not lying. Fiction is imagination. And that was very helpful, but life got in the way and I stepped away for a while. So during the pandemic, I thought, let me try this again, and took another course, and I wrote 4 really bad novels, very quickly. And I showed them to some friends and they were really bad. But I was fascinated by the number of things I had to start learning. You mentioned in your introduction, you have written fiction. You're curious about how does a character convince a child to do something that he or she may not want to do. And that's a lot of what it is. It's a way of persuasion or convincing without being so direct like I would be in an academic article. That intrigued me. I love the idea of how does a character develop over time, because that's what we all do in life. And so those kinds of things became more interesting. I took a few more classes and I thought, no way, this is way too complicated. But curiosity is one of your words, sounds like, keyword. It's also for me. So I decided to give it a little bit more time. And since that start, I published a fiction medical legal thriller last fall. I'm about to bring another one out about art fraud in Vietnam, and I'm working on another one about Vietnam because I've spent so much time there. So anyway, it was a shift from, as you say, very structured, clear-cut presentation to, ooh, how can you do this a little differently to tell a story, really to tell a better story rather than just present the data. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So was it hard to let go of the need to explain everything and just let the story breathe? Because I love I love stories, but I also love explanation, and I can get very talkative when I'm trying to explain something to people. So was it a difficult shift for you?
It still is. Of course it is. Yes. I want to be sure that they understand. But as you mentioned in your introduction, you trust the reader. And so to leave some things open. And what I'm finding now is I talk to people who've read the first book and even the second one, but the first one, two people can see something in very different ways, and it's okay. And so that has been hard to let go of. I'll tell you what I have learned about myself in this. Because I lived so long with having to have something concrete like data to start with, I need that to start with. So the first book I did was based on a legal case out of Australia about a woman who killed her 4 children under the age of 2. And that case, she's been in jail for 25 years. I won't tell you what happened, but that was the start. It allowed me to learn about, I set it in the United States. So I learned about the legal system here. I learned about gene mutation, which is the key part of that. So I have learned I need to have some concrete story or evidence of something that happened as the seed for a piece of fiction. I cannot just bring it out of my head. I don't have that kind of imagination and creativity.
That was interesting.
A good lesson finally to learn. Yeah.
You remind me of an author I did an interview with a few weeks ago. She highlights real women in STEM.
Aha.
And so she used their story to write fiction books for children.
Yes.
And I think that is very creative.
Yes.
And one of the things she said to me was that in her recent book, the woman she was spotlighting is the one that first created the data that we now use for GPS.
My.
And that was in the 1950s. And it was in an era where women were not allowed to work, and women who work were looked down upon. And so she had to get those key elements of things that happened around the 1950s. She said she even had to go to because she worked in a military base in the United States. So she had to go and get a map of that military base and what it looked like in the 1950s and try to picture the streets and places that our main character would likely have walked on.
Yes. Yes,
And I said,
absolutely.
that is amazing.
Oh,
That you,
yeah.
so it's kind of similar to what you do. You want real life data to help you to write your fiction book.
Yes. But I think what in her case is a great example. I see this now as an excuse for me to learn something new, whether it's about something in science or to go to a place to learn about the place. So that's what she did by looking at the map. Maybe she visited the military base. And so to be able to physically go and study and see and experience these places, to feel the air, to see what
Yeah.
kind of trees there are, that it's a great excuse to travel, huh?
Yes, that reminds me. I never got around to doing it. It's still in my on my bucket list of things to do. I visited. Now I've forgotten what it's called. The mountain that erupted in Italy. What's it called?
Yeah, Vesuvius. Mount
Pompeii.
Vesuvius.
Pompeii. Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's right.
so I went to Pompeii. I don't know why the name just wants off my head. So I love this story. I love history, and I wanted to write a fiction book based on Pompeii, on what's happened. So I know I started doing a lot of research on history and things that happened around that time. So it's a very intensive data to collect to write a fiction book based on something like that.
I agree. I agree. I just got a book from the library by the woman who wrote the Voyage of the Narwhal. I think it's about a whaling ship, and it's a book about writing fiction based on history. And she said, I get to read all these different things and go to different places, and maybe 50% of what I read I can't use later, but
Yeah.
I get into that. I get the feel for it. And I think that's part of it too. You may not use what you have read and studied. So for this latest book on art fraud in Vietnam, I'm looking at the list of references. I must have 20 books about art forgery, art fraud, art stealing that I collected over the last couple of years. And I used portions of them, but not all of it. But you get to learn about all this. It's just, I mean, what could be better than you're right. I am a lifelong learner. Absolutely. So
Yeah, yeah. And it's a beautiful thing to keep learning.
yes.
So is going back to the beginner stages an easy process?
It's not an easy process. I am trying to learn. I'm a late life learner of tennis as well. So a physical sport and then this mental shift. My husband and two sons are tremendous tennis players, and I was always the cheerleader. My kids would say, Mom, you need to learn how to play tennis. So every 10 years, I would take 2 days of lessons and say, that's enough. I'll just cheerlead. And I decided again, kind of during the pandemic, I would give it a try. I go month to month, I have to say, because it's such a hard, slow process. I'm not athletic at all. And so, but beginning like that, what I'm learning is the instructor has to tell me something 50 times, show me something 100 times, and maybe it'll go in. And so in my own teaching of executives, they're very smart people, top of their organizations. And you might think, I can say something once and they'll remember it, they'll bring it inside. No. So now I have no problem saying the same thing, but in many different ways. They don't realize I'm telling them the same thing because I do it in a discussion. They do it in an exercise. We have a role play, whatever it might be. But that was huge to say, if you're a beginner in whatever you are, don't worry about repeating it a lot of time, hearing it many times. And that's been very helpful for my teaching. So yeah, I think it's hard to be a beginner because we are, as adults, used to being accomplished at something.
Yeah.
And so now when I'm the worst tennis player in my group, I think, whoa, this is awful. And now I'm old enough to say it doesn't really matter. I'm learning. I'm making tiny, tiny improvements. And that's what's important, is to keep on it, not to assume that I'm going to go from here to here. It took me 30 years to become a decent academic writer. It's going to take me a while to become a decent fiction writer. So my goal, though, is to speed that process up just a little bit, which means I have to put a lot of time and effort into it, which is a reason to retire officially from a lot of teaching. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it and learning. So Yeah. But going back to being a beginner is not easy. I think.
Yeah, it's not easy. And I kind of learn from kids. When a kid is learning a new language, they don't bother. They just say it. But whereas we as adults, sometimes you're learning a new language, you're too shy to make mistakes.
Yep. Yep.
And it is when you make mistakes that you learn.
Absolutely. That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I studied German for 1 year, and then I went to live in Munich for a year. All the other students, probably 40 of us from different colleges, went at the same time, and we took a test. And I was at the bottom, and I lived next door to three men who didn't speak English, and my German went from here to here. The people who had come from very fancy schools, lots of German, were afraid to speak because they would make a mistake. I knew I would make a mistake, and I told every German, "I'm sorry, I'm a learner," and they were, of course, very open. But you're absolutely right. I have to get over the fear of making a mistake. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what was the biggest challenge for you? The one pattern change that you resisted the most that was keeping you from writing fiction?
I think I'd go back to that notion of you have to have a certain kind of creativity and imagination. I am creative in a way that I like to generate ideas. I want to come up with 100 ideas and maybe 2 of them are good. I don't have a problem with that. That means I've failed 99% of the time, but it means I've tested those 2 ideas that are remaining. So that kind of imagination and creativity is okay, is good for me. The part that's tougher is to come up with a scene, come up with a character where I don't have anything concrete. Back to that. So I can create and write a scene. If it's something that I've experienced or know somebody else who has, I can take that and work from it. So once again, I need to have something concrete to start with. But literally pulling things out of the air, I don't read science fiction. I have in the past, and fantasy, partly I think because I can't imagine for me, how difficult it would be to come up with something that I've never seen before that I couldn't use. I need a Pompeii. I need to be able to see it, feel it, touch it. And so that part, so then you have to decide, well, what's your strength? And if I am pretty good at describing a scene, a setting, and drawing from that and using it, that's what I should focus on, not on fantasy writing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask you something. Have you been sitting on a creative project or book idea for months, maybe even years? Because life just wouldn't slow down. If that sounds like you, I created something just for you. It's my standard 6-week coaching package, a focused, personalized experience designed to help you finally finish what you started. Here is how it works. For 6 weeks, we meet once a week, just you and I. You'll get a custom time plan that fits around your real life. Not some cookie cutter schedule, but something that actually works for you. You will also get email check-ins from me because I know how easy it is to fall off the track when no one is checking in. This is perfect for busy moms, writers, and entrepreneurs, or anyone who is juggling life and a dream at the same time. So, if you've been waiting for the right time, consider this your sign. Let's turn those minutes into milestones. Head over to this episode's show notes to enroll or learn more about this program. So, can you point to one high point and one low point in your process?
Tennis or writing?
Writing.
Tennis, there are lots of low points. Yeah. So in writing, well, I think there are a couple. That's a good question that you had there, but I'll give you 2 very simple ones. One is about the ending and one is about the process. So I told you I finished this book called A Case of Too Many Deaths, medical, legal, thriller type. And a book club in town invited me last week to come to their meeting, about 10 women. And I was just thrilled to be asked and to go and hear what they thought, hear their questions. Again, it's back to your comment about you have to trust the reader, and they may pick up things that you didn't mean or not see something you hoped they would get. And of course, I had to hold back on any of that. And I'm a teacher, and I'm really good at asking questions. So you're doing a very good job of asking questions, because I would normally be, and I did ask all these ladies things, but that was a super high point. So that was the finished product was there, and I could talk to people who were serious enough to take the time to read and think about the book. That was brilliant. It was 2 hours. How long does it take to get to that point, though, right? Where you have a finished product. So that's why I've learned more and more. I'm learning I have to enjoy the process. I have to find ways to make that feel good. So a high point there is when I do get into what they call the flow. In creativity research, there's this term called you lose yourself, you lose track of time. So my goal is to try every day when I sit down to write to find at least a few minutes that I'm losing myself and I'm just letting it go. So those would be some high points. I think the low points are kind of back to tennis, that it takes me so long to realize and learn something. I'm trying to learn about structure. The first few bad novels I wrote, I didn't know what that meant. Now I know what the structure of a book needs to look like, a commercial type book. What happens when, what sorts of things have to change, how you have to build up the tension, the stakes, all of that. That took 100 times of listening and learning before I got there. So I feel like my learning curve went fast at the beginning, and then I hit a long plateau of feeling that I wasn't making much change. So that was kind of a low point. But then I have to tell myself, back to learning a language, back to learning anything else. You have that flat time and then a speed up a little time. So to step back and realize that's normal, then it became not so much of a low point. I guess the other thing, though, I got so used to, especially when I was doing the radio pieces, they were very short, a couple hundred words, and I could write them and edit them, 8, 10 times. I'm a great editor. I've learned I don't mind making those changes. So rewriting and editing 50 times of a short piece, that doesn't bother me. Rewriting and editing a 200-page book, when you realize how much time that's going to take, that can be a low point. But once again, as long as I say the process is you're learning from that, then it doesn't bother me. So we've all read, I'm sure you have, about people like Hemingway who say, I wrote the last paragraph of whatever book 30 times. So when I remember that, then it's not a problem for me. But yeah, it's
Thank you.
ups and downs.
Yeah.
Isn't that life?
It's normal.
It's normal. Exactly.
It's normal. So, one question.
You have great questions. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. So, are you a writer because you have loads of time and nothing else to do? Or
I'm a
you've
learner.
learned to structure your time and manage it?
Yes. Yes. Well, I am very disciplined in everything
Okay.
except for exercise. So that's why tennis is so hard, I think. But, being a professor, I would be teaching like 2 or 3 days a week, and I worked at home on my research, and I've always been very structured. I had certain goals when I was starting out of how much of what I did every month. And this is the same way. So I am pretty much every day at my desk. I have this lovely room behind me. And so I'm here for several hours. Sometimes it's 3 or 4. Sometimes it can be until early afternoon, so 5 or 6. And it may not be literally writing all the time, but doing some research, editing. So yeah, I have to be very disciplined. I don't wait to have inspiration. Inspiration comes when you're sitting working, I think. So yeah, I'm pretty structured.
Well done. Because I believe the same. The most successful authors are people who have some structure. And it is not, and nobody has a pile of time waiting for them somewhere.
No. And that's the hugest, the biggest unexpected benefit. I don't know why I was surprised of retiring, scaling back from teaching and writing research, is I control my time now. I don't have to have office hours for students and be in the office. I was head of the department for a while. Now I control my time pretty much, but that's so much nicer. Yeah.
Thank you. So if my audience wants to contact you, what do they hope to get from you and where can they find you?
I would hope that they get from me some chance to read a book, a couple books, and maybe some inspiration. I have been fortunate enough to have a really diverse career. Many academics go in and they study one thing for 30 years and they become Nobel Prize winners. I have attention span problems. So every 5 to 7 years, I change topics from women working abroad. How does that work? Because a student one time said she had a male professor who said, you can't work in Japan. You can't work in wherever. And so I studied that. And sure enough, of course, women have advantages that men don't when they are working abroad. I've studied mergers and acquisitions, creativity, and so forth. So a wide range of things. And maybe there's some inspiration there. And then this huge amount of time in Vietnam. And so from where to find me would be my website, which is Nancy K, initial nancyknapier.com. So there'll be some books there, some other podcasts, some shorter writings, Psychology Today, just some short things, some longer things. And then I'm happy to correspond with people anytime. So
Thank you very much for coming to the Minute Mastery Podcast.
So much appreciated. Great work you're doing.
Thank you. So wasn't that such an inspiring journey from the structured world of academia to the open waters of fiction writing? Today's guest reminded us that creativity doesn't expire and reinvention isn't just possible, it's powerful. Whether you're holding on to a story you are scared to write or feeling boxed in by what you've always done, a story is proof that you can pivot with purpose. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with a fellow creative or leave a review to help us reach more authors and entrepreneurs ready to turn the page on what's next. Thanks for tuning in to the Minute Mastery Podcast. If you have found this episode helpful, share it with someone who could use more time in their day, and remember to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, you are in control of your time and you've got this.